Welcome everybody to Real Talk with Antoine D. Thurston, where we have real conversations with real people about real issues. Guys, I'm excited. I'm ecstatic at another episode of Real Talk. And today's episode is about God and grief. God and pain, God and trauma, God and hurt. We all get hurt. We all experience pain in this life, but it doesn't mean God ain't real. It don't mean God don't exist. It's just how we respond to it and process that information and process our experiences, right? But we're gonna have a great conversation today. I'm Dr. Antoine D. Thurston. I'm a minister, author, entrepreneur. I'm the author of My Bondage and My Freedom, From the Mental Institution to the Pulpit. If you like a copy, you can go to my Facebook or Instagram page. On my website, it's www.antoinedthurston.com. You can get the ebook or the paperback. It is definitely a must read. It will help you through mental distress. I was once suicidal, low self-esteem, depression, and was exposed to witchcraft. But through the grace of God and the power of God, He restored me and made me new. And I'm in a better place in Him, and it's all for His glory. Amen. But I have another fantastic person on here today. It's a good friend of mine, Yolanda Hines. And just introduce yourself, Yolanda. Who are you? What you do, and so forth.
Yeah, thank you. Again, I'm Yolanda. I'm currently living in Boston, Massachusetts. And as far as what I do, I'm a technology consultant by day, and by night, a million other things. I think for this God and grief purpose, for the past probably about 2 years, just really being affected by terminal illness, death, grief, loss, trauma, the whole nine. I really dove into that world and have basically just learned and consumed as much as I could about it. So a couple things that have come out of it that I'm working on. About 2 months ago, I finally launched a blog, which called Conversations with Myself, which is really navigating or me talking about my journey through grief and loss and trauma and how it relates back to still trusting God, even when my experience seems nothing like what I would want it to be, or almost seems to contradict all that who God says He is. I also am working currently on several certifications and a lot as far as bridging the gap with one of my biggest coping things has been fitness. So bringing fitness into how we navigate grief and how we can use that as kind of a springboard to not only grow our faith, but to get through some of these just really traumatic things. And I guess last thing, I'm also a musician. So a lot of part of how I've also turned this is I have a segment on my Instagram called Bathroom Beats, where I basically record my songs in a bathroom because the acoustics are fantastic. And it's either songs I've written just throughout the years, kind of correlating, or covers that I've done, things like that, to just as a way of not just for my own coping, but to give hope and inspiration to other people.
Wow, wow, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. I'm loving it. I'm loving it. So we both have some things in common. Not only are we believers in Christ, Christ followers, but we've been through some pretty traumatic experience and had some traumatic experience and hurts. What were some of your beliefs growing up about trauma and grief, in the home or in the church? But let's start at the house. What were some of your beliefs about trauma and grief?
Honestly, in the house, it didn't exist. I come from my family's from Italy, and as part of the Italian culture, it's a very proud culture, and so it's this. And again, not for everyone. This is not like there are exceptions to every rule, but the kind of overarching thing is you have to present a certain face. You have to present a certain just how you look, and things like depression, anxiety, and even grief, it wasn't, it just wasn't acknowledged. Or if, like if you are, I think of the older generation when if they lost a husband or a wife, that's it, you're done. You wear black for the rest of your life and you're in mourning forever. And or if you lost a child or something like that. But it was very much just you didn't talk about it. If there was mental illness, and there was a lot in like in my family and the generations before. It was shh,
Mhm.
so and so is sick, and it was just it wasn't something that you talked about. It just wasn't.
And that is major. It's definitely major. We sweep it under the rug. It's a sign of weakness. It's disapproved of. There's a stigma. It's taboo to talk about it. But when we don't, and it's really a sign of, like my counselor used to say, it's ego. I had a conversation when I went to Jacksonville. Um, I was speaking with my younger cousin. We were talking about some things emotionally, and he said he had a relative basically in the family. And he said, this person has, a lot of emotional pain. And I said, the problem with some things is, you know, if my car breaks down, I have enough common sense to recognize, okay, my car is broken and needs repair, and I take it to a professional. But when our emotions and our mind breaks down, we don't use that same common sense. So I call it emotional common sense. If I'm emotionally, psychologically broken, and I'm not being able to cope with my life or what I'm going through, then that means that's an indicator that I need to get help in some way, shape, or form. I shouldn't keep it to myself. And I always use the analogy of a car. If something's wrong with my car, I have to get it fixed then and there because it may be a small issue. It may not be a very important or large issue. But if I keep riding on it and keep riding on it and riding on it, it's going to corrode, it's going to get worse. And so what may have just been a $20 job or a $50 job is now maybe a $500 job or a $1,000 job. And some of us wait till we get to that $1,000 marker to want to now to try to get help. But it would have been easier if we would have took those indicators, those emotional indicators of stress and pain and hurt and trauma, and dealt with it then instead of waiting till it's overly accumulated. It's now so overwhelming we can't cope with anything because we ignore those indicators, and that's one of the worst things we could ever do if we're going to fix anything. We have to first receive and get ourselves diagnosed. We have to be willing to be diagnosed emotionally, psychologically, and so forth. And that takes humility. And it also says, I'm humble.
Mhm.
I'm humble and I want to be helped. I want to be helped. And I think that's one of the great things as well. I mean, even with myself, I grew up, um, we sweep things under the rug, especially in my community. So it's a stigma as well. Nobody wants to talk about it. Nobody wants to deal with it. But then we wait till it gets all, you know, all out of whack, and then now we want to pray, and now we want to do these extra large things, but we should have got it when it was small. Um, so tell us how did you get to this place of grief and trauma? What happened, and how did you get there?
Yeah. There were, I think there were minor things all along the way, but my big trauma, my big grief about a year and a half ago. Well, I think about a year and a half ago in 2019, I had just gotten married, and 2 months to the day after getting married, my husband ended up in the hospital with what we thought was pneumonia, and it actually ended up being cancer. So our first Christmas together was in the hospital with a cancer diagnosis, and it was stage 4. It was a rare cancer, but he had a great prognosis. Everything, like, it was, and they told us from the beginning, don't be afraid of the staging. From the way this looks, like, and he was extremely healthy. He was probably one of the fittest people I've ever met. Very strong and had a phenomenal mindset. Like, from the day of his diagnosis, he was like, "All right, we're gonna do this. Like, we're here." So he had a great prognosis, and despite that, though, he needed to go through a very, very, very intense chemotherapy round, and just the treatment for his particular cancer was insane. I'm talking like weeks where there was every single day he's getting chemotherapy. Every single day there's another procedure or something. And even though he went into remission probably within the first month or two, the side effects from the chemo, and then on top of that, now we're adding also in just the whole part of trauma. So he's starting to experience really bad panic attacks. I'm starting to get them, and I struggled with anxiety and depression from honestly my childhood, but it was something that I had learned to just you deal with it, right? Like it wasn't debilitating for me, and there are things I'm very much a plow through it kind of person,
Yeah.
and so I had that was the mentality I adopted through life, and now we're going through cancer. We're newlywed, and we're hitting the pandemic. So he got diagnosed in December, and we went into lockdown on March. So that was a whole new
Yeah.
just stress as far as what I can't like. There were days where I'm dropping him off for treatment, and I'm just sitting in the car on FaceTime with him, so he doesn't have to be alone. And everything that happened, like I couldn't be there with him for a lot of it. So throughout his treatment alone, he had, I think it was one or two times he almost died just from the side effects of the chemotherapy. It wasn't even cancer. So we were, and every day was something. And I'm not a medical person. So on top of hospitals and cancer centers, I don't understand this world. This is a brand new world to me. Cancer is anybody that's been through it. I really just used to think it was what I saw on TV. Like you get a diagnosis, you go into this room, you get some chemotherapy. I don't even know what that is, and then you just go home and hope it works. It's
Yeah.
not that at all. So he about 8 months, and then this past August, September, it his cancer came back, and it came back with a vengeance. So where we were still we're originally from about 2 hours outside of Boston, and we were still there. And at the time, the doctors did not realize it was cancer related, but while his cancer comes back shortly after, he developed a paralysis from the neck down. So our home hospital's like, we don't know. Maybe it's a side effect. I don't know. And at this time, I'm like, all right, we need to get you out. And he was in a spot where, because of these mystery things that weren't yet diagnosed, the cancer coming back, a lot of medications. And that's, I think, something relevant too, where a lot of times we're not given the attention or even enough of a doctor's time to be like, all right, let's see what's really going on. They're quick to push a pill, or they're quick to move on. So
Yeah.
he's having side effects from, antidepressants or anti-anxiety meds or whatever it is. And at this point, I'm like, all right, we need to get you transferred. Like, we can't, they're not helping us. They've done all that they can do. We need something better.
Yeah.
So, that was a huge, like, there's so many details that we don't have time for, but
Yeah.
so much, like, because forget fight or flight. It was straight up fight. And I'm still working at the time. And literally every single day I walked into that hospital was just some kind of drama and trauma from days of, like, I remember one day, one doctor after another, there were three doctors, each told us something completely different about his condition. So I get him transferred to Boston. I pack up all our stuff and move out here to be close to him and to be able to. He couldn't. There was a lot of he was paralyzed, and even mentally, because of treatment, because of medications, because of side effects and cancer itself, he didn't always have like the awareness to make decisions on his own.
Yeah.
So we were out in Boston, and it was very much like one day it looks like everything's like, that's it, this is turning around, God's moving, God's answering, God's doing what doctors said couldn't be done. And there was always this, like, he would always come really close to just the point of no return, and then he'd miraculously recover. And there were so many things that shocked the doctors about him. And so he fought this up until it was probably the beginning of the year, where things just really took a nosedive. And, in the midst of all this, there's a spiritual part where you're battling. Like, talk about pray without ceasing. It is a constant pleading. It is a constant storming heaven for healing or wisdom or whatever it is. And sometimes not even just that, but God, you have to open doors. You have to get us out to Boston. You have to get us into the right doctors. You have to get us into the right places. And even for his mental health and he's paralyzed. This is a man that he did not stop. He was he was the kind of guy, he was up at like 4 a.m, going to the gym, getting all his stuff done. Like he was a very active, very vibrant person. Mm-hmm. And then he can't even lift his hand. So it just like the trauma, at the time it didn't even seem like trauma because it was just focus. Like, all right, there's no option. We have to go through this because there's no other option.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then so it was very, very, to say high stress and high anxiety it's an understatement. Yeah. Then at the start of January, things started getting shaky again, and then he would come back and then it would start shaking again. And probably the 3rd week into January was when we got there's nothing we can do conversation. The cancer had taken over, treatment wasn't working, there were no other options. And he died on January 23rd. And that January 23rd was like there was a part of still like just that fight or flight, but it had to be fight to get through the funeral. And there was just drama with a lot of stuff even after his death. But it was after that, like coming back to Boston and realizing the weight of, okay, this is life now. And it was at that point where, in general, I'm a very hopeful person. I'm very much like glasses half full. And if it's not half full, I'm like, oh, okay, well, I didn't want to drink that anyway. Like I'm a very positive person by default. Mm-hmm. And this was, and he was too, and never, like we had enough reason to believe that God was going to heal him. He was going to meet this. And we had a lot of things that pointed to that. It wasn't just like, oh, I saw a butterfly today. That must be a sign from God. It was very specific things that made us believe that God's going to come through.
Yeah.
And that the minute he died was the first time in my entire life where I knew true 100% hopelessness. I knew what that like lack of any kind of expectation or any kind of anticipation, any kind of hope felt like. And then as a result of that, there's a spiritual side and then there's the physical side where it was like my body basically said, okay, you've put us through hell for the past 14 months. We can't take anymore and we're shutting down on you. And, now come all the panic attacks, like debilitating panic attacks where, and this never happened to me, not to this extent before, but very almost like stroke-like symptoms where I suddenly can't talk. I can't feel my arms. Like and these are happening while I'm driving. It's terrifying because you don't realize what's happening. And a lot of anxiety, nightmares, flashbacks, or like just flashbacks and very vivid nightmares.
Yeah.
And just like different things that result from trauma and long time or like chronic stress, breaking out into random stress highs, like things like that are just very, very physical.
So let me ask you a question. You went into hopelessness. How did other people respond when this started to happen to you?
It was from the Christians. It was almost like a switch. And while he was sick and while there was still a fight to have, it was almost like, a lot of people were sitting there, they're warring with me. They're like, God is healer, waymaker, he can do anything. We're believing. Yeah. And the minute he died, it was like, even though I'm sitting here going, okay, well, hold on. I'm not walking away from God, but I'm not just going to sit here and be like, oh, Lord, he's in a better place. Like, we have some things to talk about. Like, there are some unexplained things, and I'm not looking for the answer of why did he die, but what is going on? And a lot of what the response from other people came was very, very cliched. Like they went from God can do anything and he parts seas and he's the God that walks with us through fire to, oh, well, we just don't understand his ways. And, oh, well, he's in a better place. Or, oh, well, that's it. It was like this. There was so much, I don't want to say camaraderie. That's not the right word, but it's like they were willing to fight, and not everyone, but the majority, they're willing to fight when there's still something that tangible you can see to work for. And then God didn't come through the way we wanted to. It was almost like, and I wasn't questioning even necessarily his death. There was a lot of other things, but it was like I wasn't even given a second to talk about where I was coming from or to even express like, hey, this is the part that I'm really struggling with. It was instantly an onslaught of, oh, well, you're having anxiety. Well, the peace of God passes all understanding, and he is our comfort. Or they're already trying to prescribe how God's going to use this. So I'm getting flooded with other Christians who have lost spouses and turned it for the glory of God. And I'm like, oh, his body's not even cold yet. Like, can we just hold on for a second? Like, this is not, yeah. There was I think almost like I don't want to say a dismissal, but I think as Christians, sometimes we tend to see all this as very black and white. So it was like, all right, well, he died, so you need to accept what God has allowed to happen. His ways are higher, we don't understand, and now you need to focus on rebuilding. And the fact that there's all this very physical, very real side effects of this. This wasn't a car accident. This wasn't a random heart attack. This was a long-term struggle. And it was almost like that made them uncomfortable to hear.
And they weren't willing or ready to deal with it.
Yeah.
And so many times, we go through things. People that haven't experienced it can't understand it. Right. I remember when I lost my dad. I had a family member that I truly, sincerely loved, and they told me stop being bipolar. Because I was still grieving. Yeah, because I was still grieving. I was kind of about to let them have it, but I didn't. I held my tongue. But stuff like that, I said this before. When Joe went through what he went through, he had 3 friends, and they were real friends, but they had their own perception and view of why he was suffering. Right. And they were actually in the wrong when God actually came to Job. And so sometimes the hardest people to accept what we're going through are the people that never been through what we're going through. Right. And so, like I said before, the people that really will glue to us better in our pain, like I mentioned, Naomi was Ruth. Ruth lost her husband as well. And so she could better sympathize and empathize with Naomi. And so, we have to be able to be understanding. I think that's what was really lacking. The lack of understanding and the lack of compassion and empathy when something tragic happens. Yeah. You have this in your life, and as believers, we should be comforting. And we forget that Paul said, when one part hurts, all of us hurts. And so I should reach out to feel your pain, not to just put a Band-Aid over it and to cover it up as if it didn't happen. Right. You're a human being. The spirit beings have a soul. We're living in a body, but that doesn't mean I'm not going to feel pain. It doesn't mean I'm not going to grieve. It doesn't mean I'm not going to hurt and cry. And so since January, I've been processing. This is my 7th year after my father has died. There are some things that I used to do. I didn't do for a very long time. I'm kind of getting back to it. There's some things that really die in us emotionally, certain things that just die.
Oh yeah.
And it's painful because that part was a very important aspect of our life. Mm-hmm. And how do I resurrect this? How do I wake it back up? How do I bring it back alive? And sometimes you need someone you can trust to talk to open up to, or just the ministry of presence, just being there for someone and not always expecting them to talk. But we don't want to be in denial of a thing either, because that's one of the worst things we can do is to deny that this has happened. So what are some ways that you coped with the death, even with God? How did you even actually approach God? How did you approach God?
That was a tough one. And there's a part where I'm still, I'm only 4 months out, so I'm still learning a lot of it as I go. But especially after that initial, and I'll be honest, one of the hardest things was a lot of times when I hear, especially Christians, talk about walking with a loved one through death or being there or whatever, you have these stories of like, and I saw an angel in the room and they were talking about seeing Jesus, and it was almost like this comfort in the room. We didn't have that. I didn't experience that. And even after, for probably about, I would say 4 to 6 weeks after, honestly, heaven was strangely silent for me. And I've I've been walking with God for 20 something years, 21 years maybe. It's been a while since I was a teenager. And I have a very, I would say, like, vibrant relationship with God. It always has been. And all of a sudden, it felt like, number one, God, it felt like you betrayed me, because not because you told my husband, but because you made me think you weren't going to, and you did. Now you're nowhere to be found. You're dead silent. I don't even know. And on top of all that, it's like, I think the one of the questions in that, how did you approach God? It's, how do you approach God when all of a sudden the Bible and worship songs and all this are now seemingly triggers? Because here I was in a hospital room for however long, claiming verses over him, playing these worship songs, singing over him, and now I I can't put that song on because that's the song that was playing before he died. I can't read these verses about God, your healer, because you didn't, you're not. Like, I know that he is, but in the moment, the experience says he's not. And I think one of the big things was almost approaching it from the side. And what I mean by that is, as Christians, a lot of times, especially when somebody's going through something, and I've been guilty of this too, we try to hit them, like smack it in the face with scripture, with Bible things, with books, with like, oh, you're grieving? Well, God is close to the brokenhearted. Here you go. I can't even process that right now. I can't even read it. And one of the biggest things that first helped me to kind of like, okay, was seeing this whole experience in light of a shipwreck, where I just went through the worst storm of my life, and it destroyed my boat. Like, when you lose a spouse, everything goes with it, like my future, my day to day, everything. And we have been so wrapped up in this cancer diagnosis that it's almost like, I don't even know what to pray for. That's been the focus of our prayers for over a year.
Yeah.
Seeing it in terms of a shipwreck and realizing that right in this moment, I have one thing to do, and that's survive. I'm an overachiever. So I'm like, oh, I need to win wife of the year. I need to win caregiver of the year. There's no, just coming to that conclusion of, okay, there's no prizes. There's no glory to be, like, this isn't a competition with anyone. My goal from the days that I cannot get off that couch, or the days that I can't pick up the Bible because I'm getting massive panic attacks. What can I do today to survive? What's the little piece of driftwood that I can just hold on to keep me from completely drowning and being unable to get back up? And in that, there were, I think for me personally, one thing, or one of the first things, was almost like my attitude coming into it. And it was, you know what, God, you and I got a lot of things to work through, but I'm not going anywhere. I'm not I can tell you one thing, I have committed, just like, when I said I do, when I got married in sickness and in health, for better or for worse, when my husband got diagnosed, there was not even the question in my mind that I was going to stay and fight. Like, there was no other option.
Yeah.
And my heart towards God has always been like that. So, God, maybe there's something between us right now, and but I'm going to stay and fight because there's no option. And so it was just like having that attitude, and then understanding that what has served me in the past, it's okay for it to be different right now. So maybe I can't get up at 5 right now and read my Bible, but I can for me, a big thing, honestly, was fitness. The one thing that, like, I was able to do was go to the gym. So even at the gym, I would have the song that I could tolerate, whatever Christian song it happened to be, something that would speak life. And I would just leave it on. And almost like as I physically moved, something in my spirit began to stir. And there is something also very much to be said. God did bring just pillars in my life. He brought the people that I never expected, but he brought one or two people that were willing to sit in the darkest and ugliest places and to speak truth and to ask me, hey, like, what are you struggling with? Is it the death or is it something else? And I think it became really just understanding that the first thing is to just, what is it going to take to survive? And as I was learning just how to survive, it was almost like God would bring, whether he would bring it or it'd come through someone else, just little tiny nuggets of, okay, you know what, God, maybe I'm struggling with you as healer today. Jehovah Rapha, I don't even want to think about that because that's clearly not my life, but Jehovah Jireh, the God that provides, all right, I can handle that. I can handle that today. So today we're going to focus on provision. And that leads to also looking at the landmarks. If I look back at my Christian life, I know who God is. And even if it doesn't look like that today, I can look back and say, all right, you know what? Healer, I still can't get. Resurrector? No, but I know you as the God that provides. So for today, that's going to be enough. And it's been slowly building on that.
And you said some very key things. I've had that conversation with other people. Sometimes when people go through or fail or experience major trauma, we throw scriptures at them without first creating an environment where they can feel safe.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And that's the first thing we have to do is create an environment where people can feel safe and an environment of trust and love. And then we have to allow them to cry and weep. And I would say this, I was reading, which like I said, in my Christian counseling course, that there was a counselor, the lady was literally was fidgeting and shaking coming into the counseling room. And the counselor, got close to her and allowed her to create an environment so she could just cry and cry. And she cried and cried and cried. And she began to tell her feelings. And then part of it, what happened was he asked her, was he too close to her? Well, he or she were they were too close to her. And she said yes. And as he backed away, or she backed away, they noticed a significant difference in her posture, that it changed, that she had become more relaxed. And in that relaxation, her brain and her mind began to change where she was able to cope more. And I think sometimes in the same situation, people are not able to cope because they're not in the right environment to cope. They're not around people that are actually going to support them. And some of us, we're too close, like the counselor. We're too close. We're too clingy. Sometimes it's good to give people some space so they can relax.
Right.
We need a relaxed environment in our mind. Sometimes our environment doesn't help us relax. So even psychologists will say sometimes, go outside running. That's why physical fitness is really helping a lot, because that's part of our mechanics. God gave us the physical body, releases endorphins and oxytocin, the feel-good hormones, to be released when we're exercising. And it helps our mood. Literally, nature is proven in research. Nature, having greenery, helps your mood. It reduces stress. It reduces mental distress. It boosts your mood and even your immune system. So the things you're doing are positive, and it's helping you through it. You're creating that positive, restorative environment to be healed, to be productive, a productive person in society and Christian. And that's just the physical aspect. But as you continue to go on and on, you'll find yourself being more productive and resilient as you go forward. Even crying, they have noticed that crying actually reduces stress and helps you regulate your mood. Yep. So don't, to those that are listening, cry, let that stuff out of you. Don't hold it in, because it's going to help you regulate your mood. I can remember times I was driving on the highway and I bust out in tears. But those tears were a release. And when we release that pain and that trauma to our tears, it helps us release stress and help us calm down And knowing that with God, he takes counts of our tears, scripturally. So God is holding is counting up our tears, and He hasn't forgotten us. But so many times we think He has because of how we feel at the moment. Sometimes our feelings don't always are a proper reflection of who God is, but it is we do respond. We all respond differently to situations and how we see God. And like I agree with what you said, He wasn't Jehovah Rapha at that moment, but He's still our God. We still serve Him.
Exactly.
I've asked those questions why, and sometimes God doesn't answer,
Right.
and sometimes we want that answer so bad that if we don't get it, He's not God anymore, or I can't trust Him.
Right.
But I've learned through personal experience, sometimes God is just not going to always give us the answer we want. And we talked before that, when we spoke about Job, God never disclosed to Job why he was going through.
Right.
He never told him he had a talk with the devil. He never told him he gave him permission, And the thing God proposed to Job was, where were you when I created the heavens and earth?
Exactly.
Where were you when I put up the atmosphere and the stratosphere and the stars? When did you give me wisdom to do these things? And it was kind of like an insult. So Job, like, who are you to question me as God? I've given you all. I've given you life. Whether you see life or death, I am in control. I believe that's what God said. I'm in control, Job. Everything that has happened has been allowed. And the beautiful part about it is God was actually on Job's side.
Mm-hmm.
What He wanted Job to understand is you guys don't understand all that who I am. And sometimes we have such a fickle mind and a fickle understanding of God. We're human. So we're not going to understand and receive everything God said. And I believe when we can accept the unknown and not always understanding, that's going to help us cope better. Not fully, but cope better with what we're going through. But what I love the most is the Bible says God restored everything He had. So God can restore places and things. He didn't restore the children. He didn't bring His children back to life. But He restored His life, His livestock. He brought new children, new cattle, new things in His life. And I think sometimes we really have to understand that God, if you can do it for Him, you can do it for me. And I believe anyone that has lost anything, sometimes God will, like you said, will bring people, new friendships, new relationships to help you go through that.
Yeah.
Like you said. And I think it's amazing that you're coping with it very well. You're not allowing it to control you, but you're processing it and you're going through it one step at a time. And you find a productive way to get through it.
Yeah. I think part of it is too, like, thinking of it's almost like one thing that tends to be a cliched phrase, but is actually true. It's that whole like, oh, well, we'll see him again. Oh, well, whatever. All life is grass. It's fading away. But there is something to be said about having an eternal mindset and understanding that this world is something we're temporarily passing by. And despite loss, grief, trauma, whatever it comes, I know that the time is short and I am going to stand before God and I have to account for my life. And I don't get a pass because I'm like, well, you took my husband, so I wasted the next 15 years of my life, like, just in sorrow. That's not going to cut it, because even though He's God and He cares and He cries with us, He is the same God that said, well, Job, I allowed all this, but where were you when I hung the heavens like a garment? And so it's part of like, I can't waste my life, but I also can't waste the story that God. I don't like the story. I hate it, actually. I'd much rather something else, but who am I to waste the story? And who am I to, my husband had incredible faith up until the end. And there's his story that I can't waste too. His testimony and his just heart towards God, that shame on me if I waste it and just let grief and depression consume me for the rest of my days, because God, exactly. God gave me this, but there's an eternal purpose regardless.
I was tell you a story. In the Middle East, they have a lot of bombings, suicidal bombings. And sometimes what they do, there's some of them are so used to the terrorism, they kind of have this certain mindset. They don't deny it, but it kind of helps them to just kind of cope with it and move on. A suicide bomber came in a restaurant and he blew up the whole restaurant, crumbling down, destroyed. And within a matter of weeks, they rebuilt it. And people were in the diner, and the lady said, we have to rebuild because we can't allow terrorism to control our lives. We have to keep moving. They weren't denying, and she said this, we have to, because of the terrorism, we have to remain alert and continue to live. Yeah. Things are going to happen. Things are going to blow up. Things are going to crumble. But let's just be alert, do our best to prepare. And when it does happen, let's take the ashes that we have and rebuild. Yeah. Some of us, things blow up and we don't rebuild, or we don't think anything can come out of it. Mm-hmm. But we can take the stuff that God has remained or allowed us to have, or the rubble that we have, and we can rebuild a new hope, new dreams, a new life, a prosperous life still. So take the rubble that you have, like you're doing now. You took that and you're using it to rebuild. You know what I'm saying? And there are going to be people that are going to be in it, that are going to be able to eat from what you're doing and be blessed by it. And it's going to bring healing. So, we can't control people. We can't always control the situation, but we can control how we respond to it. And that's a cliche, but it really is true.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Because, either we stay here or we just let it control us, and we defeat ourselves. But what would you say to those that have lost someone or in that traumatizing, overwhelming state? What would you say to them right now?
Oh gosh, especially if they're fresh out of the gate.
Yeah.
Number one, don't try to be a superhero. Do what you have to do to survive. Sometimes people will say, take it day by day. That's too much. Sometimes it's literally take it minute by minute or hour by hour, and find what it is that it will change, but what can you cling to just stay afloat in that 1 second or that 1 minute. And one thing that really, really helped me, there is something to be said about community, but when you're going through loss, sometimes like for me, part of my PTSD was I couldn't be around groups of people. I couldn't, it's too overwhelming. We're also coming out of a pandemic where I had to be triple isolated because my husband was so at risk. But first off, if God is bringing someone into your life, let them be there. Let them minister to you. I'm somebody that I tend to be very no, I've got it. I'm all set. I can figure this out. And for the most part, I have. But when I think of the people that he brought in my worst moments, had I shut down or had I pushed them away, not only they would have missed out because God always reciprocates, but the way some of these people have spoken into my life. And I also, another thing is, it's okay to find people that have gone through what you're going through. So my situation is very, I don't know anyone that was a young widow, and definitely not one to cancer. And that's it's totally different to talk to somebody that's 75 who lost her husband in the nursery. It's different. But I used social media to find people who were in my boat, and the connections and the friendships that I've started to build because I have found others in this horrible, we call it the worst club that nobody ever wants to be in. That's what it is. But number one, you don't feel as isolated. It doesn't always help the loneliness. It doesn't always help all that comes with it. Yeah. But there's something to say, it's not just me. I'm not special. And I mean that in a good, in a way of, there are others going through these horrors, mm-hmm. and you start to build these connections, and grief is its own language. And when you can find people that speak that language, there's something healing in it, especially when there are people of faith and people that can truly speak life into you. So that I think, to summarize all that, just survive. Do whatever you need to do to survive, and then start. Even if you can't get off your back, keep your eyes open to see what God is bringing in, whether it's a person, a song, because He's going to use different things to minister to you in this season than He has in your entire life. And just be open to recognize it and then to also just accept it. You don't have to do anything with it. Just absorb it. Be a sponge.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, thank you. Thank you, Yolanda. It took courage to do that. It took courage to tell your story to people. And somebody's going to hear this and they're going to be helped tremendously. Everyone, I thank everyone for watching Real Talk with Antoine D. Thurston. We have real conversations with real people about real issues. Guys, we all fall down, but we can choose to get back up. We all hurt, we all cry. Guys, don't be afraid to reach out for help if you need it. God is still with us. He has not turned his back on us. Continue in the faith. God loves you. We love you. And be blessed. Until then, on the next time of Real Talk, guys, have a blessed day. Peace out.